All right. Hello, everyone. Thanks for watching this last episode of Orphan Cracked. I'm Rooney, and I'm here today with two of the best people ever to talk about this stuff with. We have Jacq and Melanie on the show today. Thank you guys so much for being here. I'm so excited to see you.
Mm-hmm.
So,
oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're all pretty excited. We have a lot to talk about today. We are pretty much going to kind of just discuss kind of bits and pieces of everything that happened during the season. So there'll be lots of theorizing and analysis and good stuff. So I'm really excited. And without further ado, I think we should jump right in. I think our first topic, we're kind of just going to do a bit of an overview of the season and talk about some highlights, maybe some things that didn't work so well. So let's have you, Jacq, if you'd like to start with some thoughts about that. And whenever you're done, Melanie, if you'd like to chime in.
Cool.
Great.
Okay, sounds good. So I really thought the season was great. I know that I have been talking about a little bit, and a lot of people have asked me to continue talking about the bookends that have shown up this season, which are really kind of cool because Orphan Black really does play with like tying together things from the beginning to the end. And now that the second season is complete, that was really, really apparent to me, which I thought was really, really cool. So, like, for example, in the very first scene of the premiere, you have Sarah in the diner. She runs into the diner, and who is she face-to-face with but Mark? And then in the very last scene of the finale, who is she face-to-face with again but Mark? So that's like, bookends, I think, really work for the show because it is such a limited season and a really cohesive whole. So putting those things at the beginning and the end really serve to make it seem complete. Even if we ask a lot of new questions, meet a lot of new characters, have some things that we don't have answers to, those kinds of narrative devices are really great for employing when you have a short season where a lot of things are happening. So there's also a couple of other examples that I noticed. So like in the premiere, Rachel says like, oh, simply surrender yourself, and then what do we get again in the finale? This is my unconditional surrender. And then I've seen some other people talking about some other little ones, like there was both a snatch of a cell phone in the premiere and the finale, a bunch of other stuff too. And another one of the things that I kind of wanted to bring up too is that not only can you see the bookends in the season 2 premiere and the season 2 finale, but you can also see them sort of throughout the series. So like in the very first pilot episode, we get the suicide of Beth, and what do we get in the season 2 finale episode, the suicide of Ethan Duncan? Yeah. So it really serves to tie in all their themes, I think, and I think they did a really great job of using that to their advantage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Another good one was the fire extinguisher. Sarah uses a fire extinguisher to get herself out of a sticky situation twice in the premiere and in the finale. And as well, I really like the throwbacks to the season 1 finale that came in the season 2 finale as well, with just kind of how far we came from there, because we go from, like you said, the unconditional surrender, and it kind of shows not just how we started, but where, like, the stuff that happened in the middle and the character development that happened for Sarah to go from refusing to surrender to surrendering, and it kind of shows that, yes, a season occurred, yes, some shit went down, and yes, we're at a different point, but yet it's kind of still the same point. I liked it a lot. I agree. Bookends are the bomb. They're
yeah,
good stuff.
Definitely. So what were some things that you guys think that perhaps weren't quite as good as they could have been, or maybe if there are any flaws in the season, what do you think? Maybe character development. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Who wants to go first?
I have things to say. You go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, so so while I did love this season and I thought a lot of it was really great, especially thematically, I think this season thematically was really, really strong. Narratively, I did have a couple of issues. Number one, the character development did sort of happen in a lot of places, not everywhere. In some places, it happened a little too quickly for my tastes. I think I had written about this somewhere before, but the relationship between Sarah and Helena, while it ended up in the place that I wanted it to end up in, there wasn't really any foundation for it to get there. It just sort of happened, which was great because like we did need to end up there eventually in order for the story to progress. But I was a little bit disappointed that we didn't get more of a slow build to that because Helena's character in season 1 was so other and violent and scary, and we shifted to her being this very like childlike character who is deserving of unconditional love very quickly. And there were some things that I wish that they had addressed with that relationship that didn't really get addressed. Like one of the things for me that stood out at the end of season 1 is that we meet Sarah Manning in the beginning, and at the end she kills her sister. That's a huge deal for Sarah Manning. But we didn't get any sort of touch. We didn't touch that at all. And then there were a couple of other things where they introduced the mystery and sort of like began to answer it and then just didn't. One of the main things that I have been struggling with trying to piece together is the whole Mrs. S mystery.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so last year we get this really huge clue that Mrs. S is not who she says she is, and that's great. You know, we leave for hiatus and we're like, oh, you know, next year we're going to find out what Mrs. S's place is in all of this. And we do get a little bit of that, like when we find out about the bird watchers and how she took Sarah and Felix to the bird watchers, and then even the introduction of Carlton, which I thought was amazing. I was so happy that Carlton showed up again. But then Carlton and S have this really cryptic conversation that never gets addressed ever again. And I'm like, wait, no, I need to know where that went. So maybe, I mean, I think part of it is that the seasons are so short, like you can't possibly address your entire mystery in 10 episodes. So you have to kind of like inch along, but the inching is not happening quickly enough.
Yeah, well, I think that, go ahead. I think the thing that comes with that is you introduce these plot holes and then you put in what feel, not like filler necessarily, but you're piling too many things on top of and leaving a lot of unanswered questions behind. And just when they could possibly be taking that time to answer some of these questions, but instead they're just pushing forward even faster and faster and faster. And I worry that we're going to lose some things along the way because of that. And we're going to lose some of those, you know, mysteries from season 1 that will never be, you know, Maggie Chen and all that, like that stuff that at this rate we're never going to go back to, which disappoints me because I really want to know about Maggie Chen. Beth Childs, I need to know everything about her. And the fact that we're barreling forward in, like with the introduction of Castor, Charlotte, whatever the shit's going down with Paul, whatever's going down with S, there's no room for that kind of backstory right now, and it's both good and bad, I think. It depends on how they handle it. And they've been handling it all right so far. It's just a matter of going forward with that, I think.
Yeah, I think it was really interesting how, from a fandom point of view, everyone was expecting someone major to die.
Yes.
Myself included, yeah.
So was I.
I was too. And I actually, I had a bunch of people over for the finale, and we made Jello shots that we're planning on taking whenever someone died in the finale. And I had so many left over. Like, only one person died. I had so many Jello shots left over. But everyone was expecting like a really big shift in dynamic, and I don't think we got it, which is kind of cool, because everyone gets to keep their favorite characters for at least one more season.
Yeah.
And I do think that the 5 characters, the 5 clones that we have right now, work really well together. I wouldn't want to lose any of them. But this season did feel very different from last season, because last season was very much like Sarah Manning on the run, like, and everyone else's stories kind of fed into her story much more cohesively. Whereas season 2, you had the Allison story, the Sarah story, and the Cosima story, and then like Helena had her little side story that eventually fed into Sarah, and Rachel's story kind of fed into Cosima's and then went off on her own to feed into Sarah's. But it felt like more was happening.
Yeah.
And I think with the fandom knowing that more things were going to be introduced, we all felt this collective fear that someone had to go. Which isn't an unfounded fear, especially when you're dealing with a show where all the characters are played by the same actress. Like, any of them could go at any moment.
And I think it's another bookend thing. Is like, we had a major death in the end of season 1. You kind of come to expect, major death, and we come to expect that again, just in order to kind of usher in, because Helena's death ushered in the whole season 2, and so to not have that was good, because they try and shock us, and we were expecting a death, and then we didn't get a death, and almost that was more shocking than if somebody had died, and I kind of like that. I agree. It was a pleasant. It was you're right, a very different ending. We left. It's not so much a cliffhanger, because they could do a time jump to season 3 right now, and be none the wiser. I've had a few people suggest that, and I could see it like. Grant, like, not a long time jump, but it doesn't have to start the next instant like season 2 did, because we didn't leave any straight up stuff hanging, right?
Right.
There's no Kira yelling out the window, or any of that. So, and I could see them doing a time jump.
That would be interesting.
That would be. One thing that I think was kind of a flaw for me about this season was, I mean, this just might be my personal opinion, but I feel like the whole Prolethean story, there was like a bit too much of it. Like, I know it was necessary to give Helena something to do, but I feel like it took a lot of time away from some of the more, to me, interesting or, mysterious kind of stories, like with, whatever was going on at Dyad and what have you. And I don't know, I just feel like didn't need to know so much about like Henrik and all that, but like I said, I don't know. That's just how I felt about that.
I agree that the Prolethean story did have a very different feel than a lot of the other stories, and I think like the setting of it, the fact that it was set like kind of far off in the wilderness, removed from everything, did give it a kind of slower feel. But I do think that story in particular, and this is a good segue to, I know, something that we were wanting to talk about. Helena's story really established, Helena's story and Cosima's story both really established the themes of consent this year. The strongest stories that established those, I think. Because Cosima's was all about like, it's my decision with regards to what happens to my body. And that's a really strong stance to take. Cosima has that agency to assert, because she's smart, because she knows what's going on, and because her story lends itself to that. But Helena's kind of the opposite, where Helena gets taken into the Prolethean compound and she has no control over what happens to her there. She's drugged. They're doing things to her that she cannot say no to, and And even when she says yes to things, this is actually one of my favorite things about the Helena story this year. Like, the fact that yes doesn't always mean yes. And that shows up again in the finale when Sarah is literally handcuffed to the table and he's asking her to sign a consent form. Like, really beautiful. And Helena's like, they touch informed consent a lot with Helena too, where like when Henrik is implanting the fertilized eggs into her, which is so gross, but you know, he's like explaining it to her, but she asks what's a cervix, and that question for me really hit. Like, this girl has no idea what's happening to her, none at all, and the slow build of that I thought was really strong thematically.
And even the storyline with Gracie as well, I think, and the idea of agency within family and within the social structures of, like, I love, like, the women's rights to their body and whatnot, like that kind of stuff. And I thought it was so interesting to see these two sides of consent that wasn't really consent with Gracie, where when she's sitting on the stirrups and you have that, like, Hallelujah music playing in the background, and it pans out and it reveals that it's her, and you know, you think, oh, she could not do that if she wanted to, but no, she had to do that. And it's very, I found Heinrich as a character very fascinating, and his, as I'm sure we'll talk about later, in his creator complexes and things like that, and how the show set up these two opposing creators of Ethan and Heinrich in very different roles, but very similar feelings of entitlement and feelings of control. But again, Ethan thematically went a different way than Heinrich did, and it's cool to see that differentiation. So that's plot-wise, I was annoyed with the Prolethean storyline. I mean, Helena got from the farm to the city not once, but twice, all on her own. Like, in the finale, I sat there and I'm like, again, like, we all questioned this in episode 4, and it just happened again. Like, maybe she's a master hitchhiker, who knows? But so, you know, plot-wise, there was a little bit of a, and then we also had that problem of leaving it for 3 episodes and then coming back. That probably made it feel a lot more jarring to people. I think, and granted, we left it to spend more time on Allison, which I have no problem with. But it was a little disjointed because we had such a heavy focus for a while, and then we had nothing, and then we had such a heavy focus, which could make some people, I totally understand, feel like it was taking away time in those times of heavy focus. So, but yeah, it was thematically a great storyline. I think plot-wise it could have been hashed out a little better.
Yeah, I think you're right. I guess one question I kind of have, like, just before we leave the whole, you know, the season as a whole, I feel like Paul's character, I don't know if this is like kind of a Mrs. S kind of thing where there's going to be so much mystery and we're never going to know exactly, you know, where he stands or what he's about, but I feel like his character was used so disjointedly kind of this season, and like it just, like, it felt like to me like he just kept popping up in places, you know, where you don't expect him, and I don't know if that was intentional or if they're, you know, if they're trying to, put some more mystery into him, or whether they just maybe didn't know what to do with him for a few episodes. But what did you guys think about Paul this season?
I kind of see the problem from, like, a writing standpoint of, like, the problem of where to use Paul, because Paul, like, Dylan Bruce comes up second in the credits.
Yeah.
He's like our main hunky guy, but in a show that's so much about women, he often is playing second fiddle to whoever is in power at the time. So in season 1, he was really only important because he was connected to Beth, and then he was important because he was connected to Sarah, and in this season he was important because he's connected to Rachel. And whenever those characters are done with him, then you need to find another place to put him. the problem of powerful women on TV. So I think Paul's place now, so now that like he's kind of Rachel's done with him, is he has to find his own little corner of the universe, which seems to be he seems, I think, to fit pretty tightly into this Castor military mystery.
Yeah.
So I'm not too worried about Paul's use in season 3, but I think season 2 was kind of about getting him to that place, so that we can use him in a more what's the word I'm looking for? Like in a more important role. Like he'll have his own role.
Mm-hmm. Well, he is also still connected to S in a sense right now, because there's a lot of backstory. I think it's very interesting to go back and look at season 1 with this knowledge now of Paul being into it and S and being into it and things, and just wonder. I often wonder if they planned for Paul to have this role from the start, or if he evolved into that role. And it would be very, and again, my fascination with Beth Childs, I think it'd be very interesting to go back to that storyline and to see where, if they ever intersect at any point, and what's going on in Cleveland, and what's going on in Ohio, because Paul did go to Cleveland in the season premiere, and Tony and Sammy are from Ohio, and things like that, and just to see if there's any foundation to this, because it did feel very sudden, and I'd like to see them build some sort of, like, oh, you should have seen it all along, kind of thing from there. Just because it did feel, to an extent, just slightly like, we need to make Paul important, so let's just shove him out there in some camo and make it work. So I would like to see some more foundation to that, but I agree, I think Paul's going to be very important going into season 3, and I've had multiple people message me asking, oh, Paul, Pollux, is there meaning there? And that is something I don't think so, but you know, who knows? It's Orphan Black, we know nothing, so we'll go with that. And I have a feeling that I'm just glad that they weren't Paul clones. That's all. I'm really, really glad that they weren't Paul clones.
I'll tell you, like, if they had cut before we saw his face, I absolutely 100% would have gone 10 months thinking that the clones were Felix.
Oh, I would have been so mad if they were Felix clones. I was so adamantly against Felix clones.
I was too, but, I mean, from the back,
the little mohawk thing?
Conclusion that I would have jumped to.
Oh.
So thank you for that reveal.
That would have been cruel of them. That would have been like,
really
cruel.
mean. Thank you for not doing that.
Yeah, especially after that, like, Cosima death fake-out scene, I thought that was so mean. So for them to have done that and, you know, cut off the show before letting you know who was the male clones, that would have been really bad.
Mm-hmm.
Let me ask you guys, like, why would you be opposed to Felix clones, just out of curiosity?
Felix is important because he's normal. He's important because he's like our lens on how we can judge things, on how Felix reacts to them, and how Felix is dealing with all the crazy shit that's going down. I think it's really important to have a normal character in there to ground, especially as people like Paul and S are becoming more enigmatic and more mysterious. I think it's really important, for me personally at least, to have narratively a character that isn't, you know, special backstory-wise, and has just an honesty about them that we can trust, and that we can trust to judge their reactions, and to just trust to know that they are what they seem.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Also, like from, excuse me, when you're mapping out the story, you need Felix to, I mean, it's kind of unfortunate because Jordan's such a great actor, but you do need Felix to be the person that can, like, inform Sarah about what's going on with Allison.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I was just rewatching the other day the scene where Sarah and Felix are, like, rummaging through Mrs. S's house, and it's Felix that's like, oh, Allison's in rehab, and Cosima and
Lesbian spiral, yeah.
You know, you need Felix to be the one that has all that information while Sarah is off on her own adventure and Allison's doing whatever she's doing, and if they're not necessarily interacting, then you need Felix to like be the one who can go and support whoever needs to be supported, and then tie everybody together.
Mm-hmm.
So if Felix has his own story, well, that's great for Felix because Felix is a great character, but it's not really great for all of our other main characters because it isolates them a lot more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Makes sense. All right. Let's talk really briefly about maybe pick one or two of your like top highlights for the season, like the best, I don't know, reveals or development or what have you. Just talk for a few minutes about that. How about you, Melanie?
Well, this is not just my own personal bias, but I really like the way they handled Allison's storyline this season because I think while it was disjointed, we still had character development, and it was nicely plotted into like these 3 arcs of the musical, rehab, hide in the body, and it was a very coherent one. And I've read a lot of reviews of the episodes and things, and critics always point out the Allison storylines as being strong for a reason, because one of my favorite things about the writing of Orphan Black is the black humor, and like there's a reason the Variations Under Domestication is my favorite episode. But there's also a reason that that episode is the one that's winning all the writing awards. It just won a Writers Guild of Canada award over any other Orphan Black episode, because I think just the way that they're able to take Allison's character and narratively handle it is so unique and fresh for TV in such a trope. And so yeah, that's why I love Allison. And I think that they did a very good job of that this season with that storyline. As well, you know, there are just some really strong thematic scenes in particular. I mean, that shower scene was just so meaty and so like I just want to sit and watch it over and over again, and I pray to God that that's the episode she submitted for the Emmys, because like that is just like, and there's just a few scenes like that where you just watch it and you're just like, this is television at its finest. And so yeah, things like that. So yeah, the Allison storyline and that one, the running in the rain, even the way they started the season was fantastic. Sarah's Cosima, also fantastic. And Sarah's Allison as Donnie was like the most meta thing ever in the most wonderful way. And so just little things like that that just kind of remind me why I like this show so much, is even past some of the flaws. I think that was,
Mm-hmm. One of my favorite like developments from this season is definitely, I think, Rachel. Actually, I love what they did with Rachel.
Yeah.
And she's still so enigmatic. Like, we still don't know so much about her. But I love how we really did peel her back this season. And what I really loved is that when you peel back Helena, you get someone that you really feel for. Like you know, I don't know, I'm getting like emotional over it. Helena's very pure, and I think everyone always says that. You know, she has a childlike innocence about her. But when you peel back Rachel, you're like, oh man, I don't know if I'm actually supposed to like this person.
Yeah.
And that's a really gutsy thing to do with your character, to peel her back and still make her someone that you don't necessarily like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you learn to understand Rachel, and you learn to understand like all her daddy issues and her power issues and manipulation issues and things that she wants but can't get, and you understand where those wants come from, like her warped need to have Kira and all of that, and even the whole Paul sex scene. You know, people got really upset over it, which I think is the point.
Yeah.
And Rachel will do all of these terrible things, and to kind of end with her in the last 2 episodes, she does all these really awful things, like she takes Kira and like drugs Felix and just doesn't care because that's what she wants.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And the oophorectomy.
Yeah, but then you see her. I love when Rachel's watching the videos too of her childhood, I thought that was a brilliant incorporation, especially when Sarah was in Rachel's apartment and Cosima's going on and on and on about like the psychology of Rachel Duncan, and she's extrapolating all of this information, and it's kind of a dramatic irony thing where you hear what Cosima's saying and you hear that it makes sense, and Cosima even says like, oh, you know, the psychology makes sense. Why aren't you listening to me? And Sarah's watching this happy family video, and it's like, well, that doesn't really match up. Did we lose Rooney?
Oh, no. No?
Sorry. Okay, sorry. So yeah, I really loved how Rachel Duncan was unpacked this season.
Yeah, for sure. I really liked what you were saying about like how kind of gutsy it was for them to make such a deeply flawed character, like even after you pull back all the layers or whatever. Because I feel like that's so rarely seen for a female character. Like I feel like we see that with male characters in movies or what have you all the time, but it's so rare that it's a woman. Because every time there's like a woman villain, she's always like secretly wants to be a mother, or she had some messed up whatever. But Rachel really seems to have this this blackness for whatever reason, and they're not trying to like excuse it or erase it, even though we're starting to understand it. And I thought that was a really, really good move writing wise. I really like that as well.
Yeah, the motherhood thing was really interesting because at one point it did really feel like Rachel. Actually, still, it really feels like Rachel really wants a kid. But I'm not quite sure why that is. Like, there could be a lot of reasons for it that would not be so stereotypical. You don't really know why she has that drive, and I think maybe it's her need to like own somebody else, or maybe it's a selfish thing, like I'm the best, so I want to further myself. So the motherhood thing is really interesting because, as Renee said just now, like it is something that you do see pop up quite a bit in like humanizing the female villain. But I'm not sure, and I hope that it's not as cut and dry as that. And I think that next season, hopefully, we'll explore that a little bit more because there are so many different ways that it could go that I'm really looking forward to seeing how they pick at that.
Yeah, I was actually honestly expecting Rachel to die in the episode, and so I was really pleasantly surprised that she wasn't, because now we get more of that, and now we get her angry, like even more angry than she was, and an angry Rachel Duncan is like the best villain you can hope for, especially with the death of Ethan, and because we're still at this weird point of like, what does Ethan mean to her? What did Ethan mean to her? Because we're built to expect some sort of longing, and then there's that episode where they reunite and there's the tears and stuff, and then she goes right back to Ice Bitch, and I think it's very interesting to see how that emotionally affected her and how she's going to wreak her revenge, because Rachel Duncan revenge is a lot of fun. I'm glad that she's not gone.
I cannot wait for season 3 Rachel Duncan. It's going to be awesome. Because right now, okay, so when we met Rachel Duncan, she was really like on top of everything. She had all the power. She had Sarah in her hand. She had Allison's contract. She got Cosima. She's above Leaky now, so she's in power, and she had pretty much everything she wanted. And then at the end of this season, even Delphine says, you have everything she wanted, and she's like, no, everything Dyad wanted. Because really, at the end of season 2, Rachel Duncan has nothing.
No, and like hers, like Marion Bowles is working for the other side, and she's above her, so what, like, all of that, and yeah, she's lost Sarah Manning, she's lost Ethan, she's lost Leaky, she's lost Marion in that sense, like, yeah, you're right, she is, I think...
She also lost her eye.
And she also lost part of her sight. That is also a problem. And a few like way back at the beginning of the season, I wrote some analysis about like windows and mirrors and stuff, and I talked about like little clone in a glass box is going to shatter, what's going down. That glass box has shattered, and there is, yeah, like we're going to get Rachel Duncan out on the street probably, and that excites me. Like Rachel Duncan in a non-sterilized environment is so important to see where that goes, and yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be terrifying for sure. Like whatever form her revenge.
Everybody okay over there?
This morning, but she's okay. Yeah. Oh my gosh. But anyway, yeah. So Rachel will definitely be super interesting like next year. I want to ask really briefly before we move on. Do you think she knows about Project Castor and like the male clones?
I don't think so.
No.
Marion only just found out about it, so I would say that Rachel does not know. Right. Yet.
Exactly.
When she finds out, though, we're all,
Yeah.
This is my favorite crack theory. I really hope that Beth found out about Castor before she died. That's like, I want that connection back to Paul, and I really I like the introducing Castor and everything, but I also, again, really hope that there's some basis for it in the background somewhere, like somewhere in our history, it's there, so we know that there's a reason. You know, like I really hope, if anybody knew about Castor, I'm hoping for Beth, because the original Enigma, Beth Childs. But that also could be a good reason to not necessarily not off herself, but it would be another motivating factor to that whole storm over there. So
yeah, I was talking to one of my friends the other day about, like, they had asked me, oh, but did Beth know about that? Did Beth know about that? And I always say whenever people ask me that, assume Beth knew everything.
That's a good one. Yeah.
That is a good theory.
Yeah, because like her finding out that Beth didn't know about something is not exciting.
No. Finding out about Beth knew about something.
Exactly. Finding out Beth did know about something, A, makes it more exciting. B, gives her yet another reason why she decided that it was her time to go. Puts something else on her shoulders, introduces another player in the mystery. Like, there's a lot of reasons to believe why Beth would know about absolutely everything, and not a lot of reasons why she wouldn't.
Yeah. Well, my favorite reason is when Sammy's message for Beth was, Paul's like me, he's a ghost, keep the faith. That suggests that Beth knew what a ghost was, and that Beth knew what to keep the faith in. So, yeah, I'm fully on board the Beth Childs knowing everything train, and it's a train, bad word.
Melanie!
That was totally unintentional.
Too soon.
And it's going full steam ahead.
Are you kidding me?
Okay, yeah, so that's the thing. Okay.
Okay.
Oh my gosh. Yes,
Okay.
it definitely seems like the more we learn and the more we watch this show, it's like the greater the Beth Childs mystery becomes.
Well, she's the original mystery. She started everything. She's so important.
Yeah. Okay, still trying to get over that train joke. But let's shift a little bit now and maybe talk about some of your favorite literary references throughout the season, or one that you think was maybe the most important or the most obvious. Either of you, feel free to start.
I think Melanie wants to take this one.
Pardon?
Yeah. I think Melanie wants to take this one.
Yeah, well, I've had, since a month before the season started, I've had a Frankenstein analysis on a Word document open on my computer, and it stayed open throughout the entire season, and little bits were added and little bits were taken away, and then we got to episode 9, and I was just like, yeah, finally. But like everybody was like, oh my gosh, that's Frankenstein. One of my friends, we got into the car, and she's like, Melanie, aren't you proud of me? I got that was Frankenstein. I'm like, yeah, I'm proud of you. But it's my favorite thing about that, and I actually wrote that down because I was like, I need to talk about this today, was that the story that Heinrich tells, we get that's Frankenstein, right? Where the doctor sailed up to the north, to the Arctic, amongst the icebergs, but his creation pursued him with a terrible vengeance because the doctor had never shown his creation any love. And so when they finally came face to face, they sat down and had a great big bowl of iceberg cream. My favorite part about that is that's not the story of Frankenstein. In Frankenstein, the creation doesn't pursue the doctor. It's the doctor who's pursuing the creation because of the doctor's guilt and the doctor's repercussions for creating this life that was so unholy and for doing this, and the guilt and the owning it and whatnot. And the fact that it's Heinrich who's telling this distorted version of the story with blame towards the creation and not towards the doctor, I found it made me so happy, because I think it's so, like I said before, we got these two creator type people, and we have Ethan who admits guilt and he says, let's fix my mistakes, let's go back and let's do this. And we have Heinrich who doesn't even in the end when Helena's shoving bull semen up his butt, he doesn't own it. He doesn't own his problems, and he doesn't own his struggles for wanting to create this terrible Helena child life things. And I think that's so cool to look at the way that Orphan Black takes these themes and like twists them on their head of this the original science fiction novel written by a 17-year-old female author. And to take that and to look at it in all these different ways from these different perspectives is so warm and yummy in a wonderful way. And it's just so important, I think. So yeah, the Frankenstein stuff makes me really happy. And there's stuff like, I have, I think, 3,000 words written, and I'm like, okay, gonna keep going. It's good stuff. Yeah, you go ahead, Jacq.
Yeah, I don't have that much more to add, but I know that actually Melanie, I can't say your name today. Melanie and I had been talking about the Frankenstein parallels for a long time before they showed up again. They were obviously there. I mean, it's a book about it's a book about a god complex and creating life that goes beyond your control, and that's exactly what Orphan Black is about. And it's really interesting that Orphan Black takes the monster and puts the monster at the head of the Frankenstein narrative, because in the book Frankenstein, really the creator is the main guy. The scientist is the one that you follow for most of it, I believe. So to take those ideas and twist them into a 21st century narrative is awesome. But also, like, there are a lot of other really quick nods that have been present since the very beginning. Like, we have a character named Victor, and we have a character named Elizabeth.
There's even a Felix in Frankenstein. There is a Felix in Frankenstein. Right. Yeah, he's minor. He's one of the people who shelters the creation in like the Swiss Alps or whatever. When he's off reading Paradise Lost, he's with like 3 people, and one of them is named Felix. So, fun fact for you. all my Frankenstein notes for this. It was.
And I think I'd also posted. So episode 9 also made me really excited because there's all this fire stuff too, and I don't know if it's the subtitle or the alternate title or whatever it is of Frankenstein.
It's the subtitle, yeah.
Yeah, is the modern Prometheus. So Prometheus is a Greek mythology figure who, we've been pretty deep in Greek mythology this season, so let's just add some more. Who discovered fire from the gods, which is like fire is symbolic for knowledge, and brought it back to the humans, and for this he was punished, and I believe he was chained to a rock, and like a bird had to eat his liver over and over again as it regenerated.
Yeah, because he was immortal. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff here that makes me think of Helena,
Mm-hmm.
especially the liver part.
Mm-hmm.
And so to see Helena escape the ranch and
Mhm.
set the whole thing on fire was
Mhm.
awesome. But then also in that scene cinematically, there's this really really intense like visual parallel between the cover of the Frankenstein book that I own, like the Dover Thrift Edition, and it's almost like too close to be a coincidence. You know, like all the colors are exactly the same, and the way that Helena's framed in the picture, like with her hair blowing in the wind, looks exactly like the cover.
Oh,
So it's pretty cool. And when I saw that, I was like, oh my god!
Yeah, it was so that I was so excited about those ones, and the connections back to Paradise Lost and things like that, because then you kind of have this circle of Frankenstein, biblical, Orphan Black, and it's this nice little interplay between them, because Frankenstein alludes a lot to the creation of man in Paradise Lost and things like that, that those same themes we see played out in the Prolethean arc of Orphan Black, and the way that it's treated with religion, and that whole quote of, requesting the maker to mold me from clay, did I, ask you to promote me, and all that stuff from Darkness. That's, we go back to I am fearfully and wonderfully made, back to season 1, and suddenly you have these really cool, just thematic, cyclical relationships that just make me so happy. And I'm so glad. That's I think probably my favorite thing about the show, is that they take the time to think about all of these, the way that it's interpreted, and it's lovely. It's quite lovely. And yeah, and like I did some research on Frankenstein, and something that came up was the Frankenstein complex, which is a philosophical thing promoted by Isaac Asimov, and it's the idea surrounding transhumanism, which is the idea of promoting mankind to a higher state through technology and intellect and psychology and whatnot, and dehumanization, which is the loss of humanity along the way, which, if we look back to Rachel Duncan and her loss of humanity and things like that, and I think and the article I was reading on dehumanization cited The Island of Dr. Moreau, Blade Runner, and Frankenstein, and I was like, what is this? This is important stuff. And it's really important to look at the way that biotechnology and bioengineering is changing the human condition, and I think that's something Orphan Black, especially with the introduction of Castor, could really manipulate and think very critically about, and cause a lot of interesting conversation in a good way. So, yeah.
I also love how all of those conversations are happening at the same time, and they happened a lot this season. But we also got this really touching conversation between Sarah and Kira about how Kira was made.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
And, excuse me. And that conversation really plays into it too, because Sarah's a creator in that way too, even though it's like the normal biological sort of creation. Like the scene where Sarah is explaining to Kira, like, there are two parts of you, and I wanted to keep you, but like you're not just mine.
Mm-hmm.
Is really thematically really cool to see in juxtaposition to all of these other creators. And especially because all of these other creators seem to be men.
Yeah.
And yet we have all of these motherhood themes, which is really rich.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, when you have a show with, 11 different women who all look the same, and one man who looks the same, it's very cool to be able to explore the different facets of motherhood and the different ways that you can look at motherhood, from S to Allison to Sarah to, lack thereof, to Rachel, and everything in between. And to be able to explore all those different identities is so cool, and it's a unique perspective that Orphan Black has because of the way it's a clone show. And it's something that they can do really well. And I think they're taking full advantage of that to create every thematic picture they can in a wonderful way.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Well, we've got a few minutes left. I know we talked a little bit about the male clones and Project Castor, but I'm also like really super interested in whatever is going on with like the baby Sarah clone that we met in the finale. Like, um, and this might still feed into the whole Frankenstein thing and the God complex and the dyad and or topside or whatever, still trying to perfect their creation of life. But what do you guys think is going to be like the trajectory of that particular storyline? Like, are they still? I know Marion said there was like 400 different attempts, and like this little girl was the only one. Do you think that's something that's still going on? And if so, like, what is different from what they're doing there and what they're doing with like Project Castor, for example? Jacq?
So I really loved the addition of Charlotte. I thought she was really, like, I wasn't expecting that at all.
Yeah, me neither.
That was a real shocker. I mean, and, I kind of always had male clones in the back of my mind.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that there were male clones, I didn't think we were going to get them so soon, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But it was never a possibility that I hadn't entertained,
Mm.
But the baby clone was not something I was expecting to see. Not at all.
Mm.
So I think it's really interesting. Like, I'm not sure exactly how it's going to play in, but I think it's going to be important. I really wonder what was up with her conception, and I wonder if, like, because Dyad doesn't really have any of the information about what made our Project Leda clones. They made that pretty clear.
Mm-hmm.
But I wonder, like, why is Charlotte the only survivor when we seem to have into the teens of Project Leda clones?
Yeah, for sure.
Like, what was it that was different about her generation of clones, I'll call it, that or our generation of clones, the Leda generation of clones, that made them so much more viable?
Mm-hmm.
And
there's the other.
Sorry?
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
And does that, like, change the worth of Charlotte as opposed to Sarah or Rachel? Like, is she more valuable or less valuable? Is really interesting.
Mm-hmm. Well, you have to think, what is so worthwhile that they would go through 400 attempts?
Yeah.
Is it like, why do they so badly need a baby clone that they're willing to, ethically and morally, the idea of 400 failed cloning attempts just makes me squeamish in a not good way. And somebody asked me, like, with her leg and what's going down there and how that came about and why she must be important if she's the only survivor from 400 attempts. Like, that's a heavy burden to carry on an adorable little child's shoulders, which A+ casting, by the way. Like,
yeah.
She is. That's an impressive little Tatiana. I think she's going to be. I'm more interested in her than I am about the Castor clones, because I feel like I know where they can take the Castor clone arc. I have a feeling where that's going to go. The little Charlotte arc is complete in the black right now, and it's wonderful. I like the not knowing what's going down.
Yeah, it makes me wonder. Like, I remember before Leaky died, Cassima was like in his office or whatever, and he was working on that, synthetic womb or whatever, and so that kind of makes me wonder if they're trying to. And then also, they designed the Project Leda clones to be not able to have children. So I'm wondering if they're kind of messing around somehow, like with the baby clones, like with their DNA or genetics or whatever, to try to make them, I don't know, maybe invincible to certain diseases or to be able to maybe regenerate. I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. It could be. There could be a lot of possibilities, I think. But I think the fact that there have been so many failed attempts is really scary, and I feel like that must mean that they're trying to do something that's a pretty big deal, or that's what I kind of think about.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows? Okay, well, we've got about 8 minutes left, and I think did we talk about everything we had? I was looking at my list really quick.
Did we talk a little bit more about the male clones?
Mm-hmm.
Let's go for it.
Yeah, well, I know I made a big post on this right like after the finale aired because everybody was in an uproar, and I was like, I need to say something, and it like I think it's at like 500 notes now. Like people have been reading it a lot, and it's I think that the male clones, I really hope that they're not. Narratively, I don't think they can be like our Lita clones. We're not going to have individual male clones we fall in love with. We are not going to, like, everybody's making a big deal about Ari Millen, you know, stepping up. And he's going to be stepping up, but he is in no regard going to be doing what Tatiana's doing.
Yeah.
Technically, you can't fit that in one show. And that would just take away too much time for our important Lita narrative. I see the male clones as being a side narrative that adds to our Lita clones that we love so much. And I think it's really interesting to be able to explore the way the Lita clones were designed for a large part to kind of view the effects of nature versus nurture. We're getting all those themes, you know, you end up with your Allisons, you end up with your Helenas, all from the same embryos. It's very exciting. I think it'd be very interesting to look at an idea with clones that were not put into different environments and were raised for not the journey, but the end point of being, you know, super soldiers and things like that, I think is where they're going to go with it. I hope, at least, that it looks a lot more at collectivity, and it could play really well into feminist ideas of looking at the historical way that women have been relegated to a collective under men, and to now suddenly have it where the women are the individuals and the men have been relegated to a collective, and to have feminist and gender commentary on what that means from both a male feminist perspective and a straight-up feminist perspective. I think if they handle it well, it can be really well done, but it also, I hope they don't give in and make it too, you know, clone of the weeky, fall in love with your favorite male clone, but we'll have to see.
Yeah, I'm also very wary of the clone of the week, falling into the clone of the week, because I actually kind of felt that a lot with Tony, unfortunately. I really didn't want to, but I felt it anyway. But I had also written quite a bit about that. But what I am really excited about for the male clones is that I have a couple of friends who are in the military, and actually some of them watched this show with me, and one of my friends was really excited when they were introduced, because he was excited to see how they explore like the hyper masculinity that the Army often promotes, or not promotes, but like there's a culture of hyper masculinity, and like what it means to be a man. You know, and I think that this show has touched on a lot about the fact that like there is no one thing that can make you a woman. And the military is a really interesting setting to look at that from a cultural, like organizational viewpoint, because this is something that it's like an organization of ingrained ideals that are masculine ideals. And to open up that world from the point of view of a very feminist show is really interesting to me and exciting. I think it's going to be great, actually. I'm not worried at all.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the hyper-masculinity is really important. And it just adds another facet to our mythology. As somebody said, you know, the writers have some sort of massive mythology boner, and I agree, it's wonderful. And I think it's, again, with that Pollux thing, what I find so fascinating is throughout all of mythology, it's always Castor and Pollux. Like, if you're going to think of two entities that are always associated together, rarely until Castor dies. And so I feel like there's going to be a Pollux, some reference or some meaning and connection in there that I'm really excited for. And I don't know if it'll be important, but I want like a little shout out or something just to kind of say, yes, we know how much you all care about these silly little things. And I was like, yeah, I care about these silly little things, because it's cool to look at the mythology of Castor, and, you know, Castor and Pollux are always depicted as horsemen with spears. They're the patron saints of traveling and horses. They are warriors through and through. And, you know, if there happens to be some connections to Helena, Helen of Troy, Trojan horse level infiltration to get her back from the military, wouldn't be opposed. But, yeah.
This may be a good time to point out that the name Mark comes from the Roman god of war.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Hey.
It's always a good time to point that out. But yeah, I think that the mythology is something that we have 9 months to read into extensively. And like I know even in the last week I've already broadened my scope of knowledge. And I think it's something we'll all stew and predict and think a long time about. I mean, it took us a long time to figure out the Lita stuff. Like, that didn't pop up until, like, I was into the fandom, it felt like. Like, in, like, January, February was when it popped up, I felt. At least, that's how it felt. But, you know, now we're jumping on Castor full steam ahead. And there's more to find, I'm sure.
I'm actually surprised that more people didn't predict the male clones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was coming. Like, it felt like a revelation that was on its way.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think, though, for me, I kind of thought they were coming, but I didn't know it would happen so soon, you know? I think...
Yeah, that's how I felt also.
Yeah, I thought it would be like another season at least down the road, but...
Yeah, well, who knows if we have another season down the road at this point.
Don't say such things.
I know, it's freak, but, like, you know, they said they originally wanted plotted out for 3 seasons, and now they've switched it to a 5-season arc is their ideal thought. I was reading an interview with Graham and John.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, if they were maintaining an original 3-season arc, this would be the time to do it. So, who knows where they're going with it, though, because networks are finicky businesses.
Yeah, that's true. All right, guys. Well, we've got about a minute left, so I want to just really quickly ask both of you, what is maybe 1 or 2 things that you would really, really hope to see next season that would just give you like a really deep sense of satisfaction?
More Beth?
Beth Child's backstory, please. Thank you.
Beth is like #1. I can't wait to find out more about her. I am really against bringing back Beth. I've made that pretty clear in the past, but that doesn't mean that I don't want to know everything about her.
Yeah.
Oh. Did we lose Jack?
No, I'm here.
Oh, okay. Never mind. Yeah, I'm excited about Beth. Beth's important. Beth is like the number. I really want the series to end with going back to Beth in some way, or to tie up those ends by the time it ends, because it's still like bookends, you know. Start with the suicide on the train and have that all be sorted out by the time it's over. And also, like, I hope that they're more together. Like, I get the point of the season was to be disjointed and things like that, but the strongest moments have come when all of our people band together. Yeah. And, like, again, no secret that I love Allison, and I miss the Allison, Cosima, Sarah interactions and the way, and it gives us room for more amazing cloneception moments and things like that. I really hope that the introduction of all these new mysteries doesn't stop us from having those moments and having the everybody coming together times, because I think that those are vital to like the heart of what the show is.
Yeah, that's on my wish list too. I feel like this season we got a lot of the relationship building between Sarah and Cosima, which was awesome. I was waiting for that for a really long time. And so on my wish list for season 3 is more relationship building between Allison and Cosima. That I am really, really hoping to see.
Yeah.
Did we lose Rooney? Maybe.
Did we? I'm not sure.
Continue talking about all the things that I want to happen on this show.
Oh, I could talk for hours about that. Yeah, more of that, and just not losing track of like what the heart is and where we started. And like, it's great to build all these great new mysteries and everything, but there's a reason that this show took off from where it was, and it was a little clone show with an amazing actress, and I hope that they don't get don't pull a Lost. Like, let's not get too way out to left field and forget that there's characters and a story behind this. I hope. We'll see.
I think that we're in a good spot. I also am really excited to see Helena's story next year, because I was kind of waiting for Helena to die.
Yeah, I was too. Sacrificial, it was coming.
Which it still might.
Mm-hmm.
But, Rooney is back, it looks like.
Oh, wonderful. Hello. Oh.
Hi, that was really weird.
We continue talking in your absence.
Oh,
Yeah.
Good.
I was waiting for Helena to die too. I feel like now that they've settled in that she didn't die, that there's somewhere they can keep going with that.
Yeah, I feel like her trajectory for next season looks pretty clear, which is kind of awesome.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Like, I mean, I'm still always wary about Helena. Like, she made her comeback, and now I'm wary again.
Mm-hmm. I kind of hope she turns assassin mode back on. Like, I hope we get. I love everybody loves infantilized Helena, but there's something about I will get you like a fish that we need to see a little bit more of.
Yeah, I had said to somebody the other day, like, all this Helena character development is great, but Helena's really at her best when you don't know whether she's gonna like murder you or lick you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true though.
Yeah, Helena's important. Also, I do hope that they don't, again, I was also a little on the fence with the Tony introduction, but I hope they don't forget about that. Like, make it feel like less of a clone of the week if we make that important. And he's not going to come and be a full-fledged member of the Clone Club, but I think in revealing Beth Childs' backstory, if we end up touching back on that storyline again, it'll make episode 8 feel hopefully worth it.
Yeah, after episode 10, I was kind of a little confused as to why they chose to introduce Tony so early, because part of my confusion with the introduction of Tony is that he felt like very much out of left field.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was like the way the episode was maybe structured, but also because like we weren't really talking about gender until Tony came in, and then we were. But now, like at the end of episode 10, we're talking about gender now.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
if Tony had just if Tony had made an appearance after the knowledge that there are male clones, that would have totally changed the dynamic of how he interacts.
Yeah, I agree, and I hope, like I said, I hope that they talk about that at least and address it.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure. All right, guys. Well, we are out of time, so we should probably wrap it up. But I just want to say thank you so much to you both for being here today and for coming back. I really love talking to you guys and just listening to you. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you for doing this. It's a party and a half.
Yeah, it is really fun.
Thanks
oh, sorry. Did you say something, Jack?
I said thank you for having us.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. All right, everyone, thanks for watching. That's it for Orphan Crack this season. Maybe we'll be back next year. We'll see. But everyone, have a good day. Thanks for watching. Bye.